For decades, the suit was a cage. A stiff, formal uniform that didn't just confine the body, but the spirit, too. It was armor, built from heavy wool, rigid canvas, and social pressure. It had a shape, and you were meant to fit into it. Then, one man took that cage apart, piece by piece, and put it back together to create not just a new suit, but a whole new way of being. This is the story of how Giorgio Armani's deconstructed suit changed everything. This is a story about more than just fashion. It's about power, ambition, and a quiet revolution that started with a single stitch and ended up completely redefining what success looked like. It's the story of how one man's vision for a more relaxed, more human way of dressing didn't just change our closets, it changed the way we saw ourselves. To really get what Armani did, you have to picture the world he was rebelling against. Before the mid-1970s, a man's suit was all about unyielding structure. Think of the formal courts of Europe or the stuffy tailoring traditions of London's Savile Row. In America, the sack suit from places like Brooks Brothers was the go-to for the corporate world, a boxy, conservative uniform made for fitting in, not for comfort. These weren't just clothes, they were social rules you could wear. They were built, not draped. Heavy wools were backed with stiff horsehair canvas and layers of lining to create a hard, unchanging torso. The shoulders were padded and pronounced, creating an artificial, imposing shape. Whether it was the three-piece suit of the early 1900s or the buttoned-up styles of the 50s and 60s, the message was clear: professionalism was rigid, authority was stiff, and your personality came second to the uniform. These suits were heavy. They were hot. They were hard to move in. You didn't so much wear the suit as you were encased by it. It was a physical version of a social contract, a world of strict rules and hierarchies about what a man should be. Fashion back then was a far cry from the personal expression we know today. It was a uniform for an old world, and it was desperately overdue for a change. That change came from a pretty unlikely place. Giorgio Armani wasn't a product of fancy fashion schools. He was born in Piacenza, Italy, in 1934 to a modest family, and his first dream had nothing to do with clothes. He wanted to be a doctor and even enrolled in medical school. But after a couple of years, he left for military service, and his real journey began in 1957, not at a design table, but on a shop floor. He got a job as a window dresser and buyer for La Rinascente, a big Milan department store. For 7 years, he learned the language of retail, not what critics said was fashionable, but what real people actually wanted to buy and wear. This practical education gave him a totally different perspective. He understood the customer long before he understood couture. In the mid-60s, he finally moved into design, working for the menswear brand Nino Cerruti. Here, he mastered the mechanics of tailoring and started freelancing on the side. This is where the seeds of his revolution were planted. He began playing with softer fabrics and lighter constructions, quietly questioning why suits had to be so rigid. But the real catalyst wasn't an idea, it was a person, Sergio Gagliotti. An architectural draftsman 11 years younger than him, Gagliotti became Armani's personal and professional partner. He saw the genius in Armani's quiet vision and pushed him to go for it. He was the business brains to Armani's creative soul. In 1975, they took a huge leap. Gagliotti convinced a hesitant Armani to sell his old Volkswagen to raise some startup cash, and together, they founded Giorgio Armani S.p.A. Armani's philosophy came from a simple desire: he wanted clothes that felt as good as they looked. He believed fashion should make your life better, not run it. As he once said, real elegance is not about being noticed, it's about being remembered. He was tired of the stiffness and formality. He envisioned a new kind of elegance, one that was fluid, comfortable, and above all, human. The first collections Armani showed under his own name in 1975 were like a quiet thunderclap. He introduced the idea that would define his entire career: the deconstructed jacket. It sounds technical, but the concept was beautifully simple. He took the traditional men's suit jacket and systematically stripped it of its armor. First, he pulled out all the heavy linings and internal padding that gave old suits their stiff, unchanging shape. The horsehair canvas in the chest? Gone. The big, bulky shoulder pads? Gone. This allowed the jacket to follow the natural line of a person's own shoulders. This process of subtraction was revolutionary. But he didn't stop there. He started using fabrics that had always been seen as too informal or even feminine for menswear: soft wools, linens, and silks that had movement and could breathe. The result was a jacket that felt less like architecture and more like a second skin. It slouched. It moved with the body instead of fighting it. To put on an early Armani jacket was to feel a whole new kind of freedom. This wasn't just about looks, it was psychological. The man in an Armani suit wasn't propped up by his clothes anymore, his confidence had to come from inside. His power was implied, not shouted. This was all tied together by Armani's iconic color palette. He avoided loud, flashy colors and instead focused on sophisticated neutrals, muted beiges, deep navies, and a specific grayish beige that became known as grayish. It was a deliberate choice. The quiet colors created a canvas, suggesting the wearer's personality, not their suit, should be the main event. He perfectly summarized his approach: I was the first to soften the image of men, and harden the image of women. I dressed men in women's fabrics, and stole from men what women wanted and needed, the power suit. The world was about to find out just how powerful that idea really was. For a few years, Armani's deconstructed style was a secret celebrated mostly by fashion insiders. But in 1980, one movie took his quiet revolution and broadcast it to the world, turning a design philosophy into a global phenomenon. That film was American Gigolo. Richard Gere starred as Julian Kay, a high-end escort in Los Angeles whose identity was defined by his cool sophistication and, of course, his impeccable wardrobe. In that wardrobe was pure Giorgio Armani. The director, Paul Schrader, gave Armani his first major movie credit, a partnership that would cement his international fame. There's this one legendary scene where Gere's character lays out his outfits on a bed, carefully choosing his look for the night. We see drawers of perfectly folded shirts, a rainbow of silk ties, and a row of unstructured blazers. In that moment, the clothes weren't just costumes, they were the co-star. They told us everything we needed to know about this man's world of taste, control, and seduction. Audiences saw Richard Gere moving in these revolutionary clothes and witnessed a new vision of masculinity. He looked powerful precisely because he wasn't trying so hard. His linen suits suggested an ease and sensuality that was the total opposite of the stuffy suits of the time. The American Gigolo suit was relaxed, confident, and impossibly chic. It became the aesthetic of the 80s. The effect was immediate and explosive. Suddenly, every man wanted to look like Richard Gere. Demand for Armani shot through the roof. The film launched Armani in America, making his name synonymous with modern sophistication. It was more than just product placement, it was the perfect marriage of a character, a style, and a cultural moment. The deconstructed suit was now an aspirational identity, and Hollywood had just given it a starring role. While Richard Gere was busy redefining masculinity on screen, Armani was sparking another, equally important revolution. He was arming women for their own climb to the top. The 1980s was a decade of huge social change, with women entering the professional world in record numbers. But as they broke into boardrooms, they faced a question: what does a powerful woman wear to work? The options weren't great. They could choose fussy blouses and skirt sets that felt dated, or they could wear clumsy imitations of menswear, boxy, ill-fitting suits with giant shoulder pads that seemed to scream, "I'm just trying to be one of the boys." Women needed a new uniform, one that projected authority without forcing them to give up their femininity. Giorgio Armani provided the answer. He took the same principles from his deconstructed menswear and adapted them for women. He had already started designing for women in 1976, but by the 80s, his women's power suit had become an icon. He took the elements of the male wardrobe that signal power, the tailored shoulder, the elegant trouser, the authority of a blazer, and translated them into a new language of female empowerment. The Armani power suit was a masterpiece of balance. The shoulders were defined but not comically huge. The fabrics were fluid and draped gracefully. He paired his soft jackets with wide-leg trousers or elegant skirts, creating a silhouette that was authoritative yet relaxed, powerful yet graceful. It wasn't about making women look like men. It was about giving them their own armor. This was the harden the image of women part of his philosophy in action. The Armani blazer became a symbol for a generation of ambitious women. Putting on an Armani suit was like putting on a new kind of confidence. It was a quiet statement that you were serious, you were capable, and you were in control. From Wall Street to movies like Working Girl, the power suit became the defining look of the empowered 80s woman, and it was a look that Giorgio Armani had perfected. If you're finding the story of design and disruption fascinating and want to learn more about the icons who shaped our world, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. You won't want to miss our next deep dive. With the deconstructed suit for men and the power suit for women, Armani captured the spirit of the 1980s. But he didn't stop there. He masterfully used this momentum to build a global empire and change the game for celebrity culture. Before Armani, the red carpet was kind of a mess. Stars often wore their own clothes, sometimes with questionable results. Armani was one of the very first designers to understand the immense power of dressing Hollywood's elite. He hired publicist Wanda McDaniel and pioneered the system of loaning outfits for major events that's standard practice today. He was selective, choosing stars whose elegant image matched his brand. He started with Diane Keaton, who wore one of his unique layered looks to accept her Oscar in 1978. Soon, Hollywood's biggest names followed. Michelle Pfeiffer, Jodie Foster, and Julia Roberts all became ambassadors for the Armani look. In 1990, when Julia Roberts accepted a Golden Globe in a men's-style Armani suit she bought off the rack, it became one of the most iconic red carpet moments in history. That same year, his dominance was so total that the industry paper Women's Wear Daily nicknamed the Academy Awards the Armani Awards. He had essentially written the playbook for the modern red carpet. This Hollywood exposure acted as a global marketing campaign, cementing the Armani suit as the ultimate symbol of success. The aesthetic trickled down from movie stars and bankers to professionals everywhere. Dressing Italian became shorthand for a kind of cool, cosmopolitan achievement. Recognizing this, Armani and his partner Sergio Gagliotti brilliantly diversified the brand. They didn't just sell $1,000 suits, they created an entire Armani lifestyle. They launched Emporio Armani in the early 80s as a younger line, and in 1991, AX Armani Exchange brought the brand style to an even wider audience. They expanded into everything: fragrances, jeans, cosmetics, home furnishings with Armani/Casa, and even hotels and restaurants. He built a multi-billion-dollar empire by meticulously controlling his brand's identity, making sure the core values of elegance and quality were always there. He had created a complete world, all built on the foundation of that first, revolutionary jacket. Giorgio Armani's revolution is permanent. His influence is so deep in the way we dress now that it's almost invisible. The deconstructed suit, once a radical idea, is now just the suit. The stiff, armored tailoring of the past feels like a historical artifact. Nearly every modern suit jacket, from fast fashion to high-end couture, owes a debt to Armani's decision to take out the padding and soften the shape. He created the blueprint for modern tailoring. And his legacy goes far beyond menswear. The power suit he designed for women normalized pantsuits in professional settings, giving women a template for authoritative dressing that's still relevant today. But maybe his most profound legacy is philosophical. Armani taught the world that confidence doesn't need to shout. In an industry driven by loud spectacle, his career has been a masterclass in the power of subtlety. He proved that elegance could be comfortable and that luxury could be understated. The man who once wanted to be a doctor ended up healing fashion of its stiffness and formality. He built one of the world's most successful fashion empires while remaining fiercely independent, a true rarity in an industry now run by huge conglomerates. After the tragic death of his partner Sergio Gagliotti in 1985, many wondered if the company could even survive. But Armani took on the business responsibilities himself, guiding the brand with a steady hand for decades and cementing a legacy that is entirely his own. From the shop floor in Milan to the biggest stages in Hollywood, Giorgio Armani's journey was one of quiet conviction. He looked at the suit, the most enduring uniform of modern life, and saw not a tradition to be protected, but a prison to be unlocked. He took it apart, removing the barriers between the clothes and the person, and in doing so, he gave us all something new, a way to be powerful without being rigid, elegant without being uncomfortable, and successful without losing ourselves. The world before Armani was stiff and structured. The world after is fluid, relaxed, and defined by a confidence that comes from within. He didn't just create a new suit, he tailored a new identity for the modern world, proving that sometimes, the most revolutionary act isn't to add more, but to strip things down to their simple, elegant truth. The cage was opened, and we've never dressed the same way since.